Hey guys, how are you today? I'm in my ponytail today because it's summer and I'm doing my swimming classes and my hair is wet. Today I want to do a video for you on how do you challenge an appraisal. And it's not making sense. It's typically people challenge when it's lower than what they are anticipating the value to be. So how do we challenge an appraisal? All right, let's get into it. So I'm a licensed realtor here in the Central Florida area, also a licensed loan originator. So what is an appraisal anyway? So an appraisal is done when the bank when you're doing either a purchase of a property, refinancing, or if you're defaulting on your mortgage. The bank typically do what is called an appraisal. An appraisal is where they get a licensed professional appraiser to go out and do an appraisal of your home. They're trying to find the value of the home. What is the value? Maybe you're thinking the value of your home is $500 and the appraiser came in back at $475, which would be a $25,000 deficiency, and the bank is going to take the appraiser word for it, not yours. So the best thing to do first is probably to hire a realtor to kind of get an idea of what the value of the property is based on the most recent sales in the neighborhood. Now, the bank is not going to take the realtor's word for it, but the realtor will have a pretty good knowledge of what the house may sell for. The appraiser might go out there and don't agree with the realtor, and they're going to give their own pricing. So an appraisal is very important in making or breaking and financing any mortgage deal. In order for you to get a mortgage, property has to be appraised. In order for you to sell your home to a buyer that has to get a mortgage, the house has to be appraised, right? So why would the appraisal not work? So let's examine what the appraiser's job is. The appraiser job is to go to the home, inspect the home, look for any upgrades, all that great stuff, and determine the square footage of the home, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, all the improvements, compare that to other homes that are selling in the area, and come up with a value of what that home price should be. If the appraiser is not familiar with the community, like if they're coming more than 50 miles away from the community, that may present a challenge, because sometimes you have homes valued more simply because they're in a better school district, or they're close to the highways, or close to shopping, or just for proximity. Sometimes some neighborhoods sell higher because of the location of the particular community and the amenities that the community offers. So that's why it's very important for them to use properties that are sold in the immediate community. The appraiser typically look for the first 90 days. So what has sold within the last 90 days in this neighborhood? If they can't find 90 days, they're going to go out to 6 months. They really try to stay in the 6-month scope. Very rarely will they go over 6 months. And this is if there's no other sale absolutely in the community or the surrounding areas. They normally have certain guidelines. So for suburban areas, they could go out to 2 miles of the neighborhood. For rural, they could go up to suburban rural kind of thing. It could go up to 5 miles. For very rural, they could go out to 10 miles. So that's the radius they have to use for comparables. But they have to start at the closest first, and then they keep going out. So the first thing you need to, if you want to challenge the appraisal, is you got to get a copy of the appraisal. If you're a buyer, you would have paid for the appraisal because the appraisal is normally paid by the buyer. So the buyer has a copy. If you, the seller, want a copy, you'd have to ask permission from the buyer. Hey, can I see a copy of the appraisal? Most agents, if you're working with a realtor, will send over a copy, especially if the appraisal came in lower than what's on the contract. So the bank will lend the contract price as long as the appraisal price is similar or is in alignment with the contract price. If it's not, if it's lower, it's going to be a problem. The bank is not going to lend more than what the property is appraised for. So either the buyer would have to take more money to the closing table, or the seller would have to lower the price. So ask for a copy. Once you get the copy, you're then able to examine, you and your realtor, if you're not really familiar with that, or even you could hire another appraisal just to take a look at the copy of the appraisal, just to see if it's aligning with what the requirements are. Are they using properties within the community? Are there properties to use within the community? Did they go too far away? Did they adjust did they adjust justifiably is what I'm going to say. So that means, let's say your home is the home they're appraising is 2,500 square feet. Is the other homes in conjunction with the square footage? And if they're not, why didn't they use things that were similar to the square footage? And if they had to adjust, was the adjusted made in line with the market value or the market conditions of that particular area? In other words, how much per square foot is selling in the area, and how did they determine that, and did they use that? What about improvements, right? Homes that are overly improved are very hard to appraise. So let's say you had the biggest home on the block, or your home had all the bells and the whistles and the other homes don't. It's very hard to come up with a justifiable price for the over improved home, but most appraisers work to do that. So we're going to get a copy of the appraisal. We're going to examine that. When we're examining that, what are we looking for? We're looking for, are the comparables that they're using up to date with the comparables of the particular home? Maybe you're doing a refinance and the appraiser went out there and you thought the home was valued at X, but now the appraiser is saying it's low, which means you'll get less cash. You'll have less to cash out of the refinance. So that's going to be super important. So are the comps that they're using, are they comparable sales? Next thing is, were there any improvements that were left out? Did they use the correct amount of bedrooms, correct amount of bathrooms, correct square footage? Do we have a garage? Did they put the garage on there? Do they have the correct lot size? So all that stuff you got to look at, right? And are they comparing it to justifiable comparable? Maybe they may have missed a comparable. Maybe a comparable may have sold right after they did the appraisal, and by the time they turned the report into the bank, I know you're getting a copy of it, maybe other things did sell or did close, right, in between that time, and you could see it. Are they only looking comparable? Are they only using comparables on the MLS? What about private sales? Did they check the county records to see if there's any private sales that can be used as a comparable, and they didn't use it? That's what we're looking for. How well does the appraiser know the area, right? If the appraiser, once you get a call, hey, we're coming to do the appraisal, then you could look up that appraiser and see if they're coming from the neighborhood. If they're coming from more than 50 miles outside of the neighborhood, then maybe you could call and say, hey, I want a more local appraiser. The lender cannot pick the appraiser. They send it out to an appraisal house, and the appraisal is picked like that. But they could definitely choose a different appraiser if you're like, hey, this appraiser is coming from more than 50 miles of where the house is located. I don't think they're going to have local knowledge. Can we get another appraisal done? It is very difficult to challenge an appraiser without evidence. So we have to have evidence that we just discussed of comparables that could have been used that wasn't used, improvements that wasn't taken into play on the home that they're appraising, that they overlooked. Maybe there was an additional square footage added, maybe an additional room or something like that. They can only use additions to the property if it has a certificate of occupancy. That means when you were doing the expansion or the renovation or to extend, you got a permit to do it, and the building inspector signed off and gave you a CFO. If you put an extra building or extra anything on the property and it doesn't have a certificate of occupancy, the appraisal cannot use that. So bear this in mind, okay? So this is how we're going to challenge it. We need to collect evidence. So we need to collect evidence before the appraiser goes out there. We have our comps. We know what homes are comparable to our homes that sold within the last 3 to 6 months. We know the improvements. We're familiar with the square footage, the cost per square footage for that particular neighborhood. We are familiar with what the value of the neighborhood is, or the community, or the area is. Maybe it's a club, maybe it's a golf club community, and because it's on a golf club, it's going to get more money. Maybe it's a waterfront property. So all this stuff is going to bear in mind. So if it's a waterfront property, they're going to have to compare it to other waterfront properties. If there's no other waterfront property or golf course properties, then they're going to have to adjust. They have to make adjustments for, okay, how are we going to do this, right? That's super important. So an appraiser can be challenged. The bank can ask for a second opinion. If it comes down to that, that means they have to have enough evidence of, okay, this appraisal was not done correctly. You need to research the appraiser before the appraiser gets there to make sure it's a neighborhood appraiser that's going to go. If not, you could challenge that. If you are the seller and the appraisal came in lower, you could ask the buyer if they could get you a copy. If it's a refinancing kind of situation, you will get a copy because to refinance, you're the one paying for the appraisal to be done anyway. If you're in if you're behind on your payments, the bank will also probably get an appraisal done, or they might get what is called a broker's price opinion, a BPO. In the situation of a BPO, that will be done by a real estate agent, and they're doing not exactly, but very similar to what the appraisal would do as far as getting sold comparables, active comparables, pending comparables to determine the price of the home. So that's what an appraisal is. And the bank is looking for value because the home is going to be used as a collateral for the loan on the home. So that means the home has to be valued the amount of money the bank is going to be lending. And if it's not valued like that, the bank is not going to lend it. And the key ingredient in this is the appraisal report. I hope this helped, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.